Digging into the Week 16 preview, 2 games of the week to hit today. Both of these games presented by BetMGM. Kicking things off with the Jags at the Broncos. Broncos only 3-point favorites in this game at home against the Jacksonville Jaguars, which I find interesting. Dave, why is Jags-Broncos one of our 2 games of the week in Week 16?
Before we get into that, can we ask the league to treat this like more of a game of the week? That's my big takeaway heading into this weekend is Jags are 10-4 playing at the 12-2 Broncos. To answer your question, I guess, it's the team that is currently the talk of the AFC going against the new hotness. It's great. The Broncos get that big win against the Packers. We give them their kudos. We take them seriously as a contender. And now a team on a 5-game win streak comes into Denver trying to do what the Broncos just did to Green Bay. But it's a regional broadcast. And that upsets me a lot. And like, there's stuff that goes into that that's way above my pay grade. Like Fox has a doubleheader on Saturday that goes into it. All those esoteric broadcasting rules, but like the Mountain Time Zone and Duval County are going to see this game. And that seems like a crime considering the records of the teams involved.
Yeah, I don't think about that enough because, again, we're watching every game. And so it doesn't, which games are on and which places matter less to us.
Fair.
The fact that a general football fan without Sunday ticket would not be able to watch this game if they wanted to is kind of a bummer because it's a pretty damn good game, Derrik.
It's a really good game, and this is like a good spot for, I know last week's game, obviously Denver like really showed up and played a really nice game against the Packers. I do think this is, and maybe I'm wrong for this is still a Denver team that I kind of want a little bit of like, do it again. And this is, I think Jaguars team raises to the level of like, if you beat them, especially if they beat them handily, then at that point it's going to start to be like, all right, the resume is building to a point where it's pretty hard to deny how good this team is.
I would just love to go back to like Week 5. I'm wondering, what was the week where... Probably a little bit later than that, but I would love to go back to that game? Thursday night game after when the Broncos won.
Like Week 10,
maybe it wasn't a Thursday night game.
That was Week 10.
Okay.
So that was November 6th, and it was awful and disheartening, and we said some pretty mean things on the live stream, which I don't really regret.
No, it was in the moment. It was correct.
It was was
ugly.
It was one of the worst games of the 2025 season, and that combined with the Jets game that they played in London not that long before that. As fun as the Green Bay game was, and as nice of moments as the Broncos have had, like they've played some really ugly football at times this season.
Let's tie this together. If you had told me after both London games, the one from the Broncos and the one from the Jags against the Rams, that it would be December 17th, these teams would have a combined 22-6 record. The Broncos would be cruising toward the 1 seed, and the Jags would feel legitimately dangerous in the AFC. I'm not sure we would have responded to that in kind. Like, I think it's a very pure representation of what this season has been. The fact that both of these teams have arrived in this point, considering how they felt at times in like the middle of October.
We had a whole bit about that on one of the recap shows where like it's a long season. Yeah. You know, it's a series of 1-month seasons basically. And kudos to these teams. I mean, they've had their ups and their downs, a lot more ups for Denver, just at least in the record, but it really feels like both of these teams are playing their best football of the season at the right time.
Let's get to when the Jags have the ball in this game. Derrik, the number one thing you've got on your mind when the Jaguars are on offense against the Broncos on Sunday?
I am deeply concerned about this offensive line versus the Broncos defensive line. And I think that's for a couple of reasons. One, I think you can make the easy case of just like quality wise, right? I think the Jaguars offensive line has been mediocre at best and gotten away with it in certain games. And I think Liam Cohen has really schemed around them very well. And in certain games, he's done a lot of good, like, you know, they can move linebackers with motion or formationally, they can beat teams, all that stuff. But against teams specifically that can, you know, they have length, they can pop off the ball and bully you, they have strength up the middle. The Jaguars have really struggled to move teams off the ball, and instead they have gotten pushed into the backfield. Man, you look at this Denver front. DJ Jones is in the backfield all the time. Zach Allen continues to be one of the best defensive linemen. John Franklin Myers is like the ultimate just ass kicker D-line 3. Like this front, the interior, it's really hard for me to see how the Jaguars are supposed to survive that, both in the run game and in the passing game. And so I think if the run game struggles a little bit, there's a chance this starts to feel a little bit to me more like what we got from earlier parts of the Jags season where they end up in 2nd and 9s. Nick Bonito can fly off the edge against whatever tackle, and then it starts to get a little bit herky-jerky from there.
Yeah, Walter Little is practicing again. He missed, I think, a couple games with concussion, but he was a full participant in practice this week, so he should be back. So maybe that helps a little bit. But when you watch the Jags have been red hot since their bye, essentially, they've been one of the most productive offenses in the NFL. I mean, you look at some of the numbers in terms of them throwing the ball. They've been one of the best passing offenses in the NFL, but they have not played a lot of fronts since that time that would scare you. And this Broncos front is scary. There's no way around that.
21 of Trevor's 32 sacks taken this year, and 71 of the 160 pressures he's faced this year. So 66% of his sack total and 44% of his pressure total have come across 4 games. And I would hypothesize those are against the 4 best fronts the Jags have played. They played Houston twice, Seattle, and the Rams. Houston, particularly the second time, and anybody that remembers that Seattle game in particular, just decimated the Jags offensive line and gave Trevor basically no chance. In the second Houston game and in the Seattle game, he faced a 50% pressure rate. And yeah, like I said, I would suggest this is the first time they've gone against a front of that caliber since that point in the season where it looked like Trevor wasn't going to have a chance. So that is the number one thing I'm circling in red ink for this matchup.
I will say, over the last few games, I think that the Jags and Trevor specifically have looked really good against the blitz. Like, if you look at how quickly the ball is coming out, him knowing where his outlets are, I actually like the way that they've been playing. The numbers aren't overwhelming, but I think that the process has been good when you watch them in those moments. But it's different when you're playing against the Jets and then you're playing against that Broncos front doing some of those mugged up pressures when those 3-man games on the left side with Alex Singleton and then letting Nick Bonito and Zach Allen have one-on-ones on the other side. Like, this is a very different sort of beast this week.
It is. Like, this is one of those, I think the Jaguars are a good team. I really like a lot of the stuff that they've been doing. I think they're playing very well on offense. And I think against 26 of the 32 defenses in the NFL, Liam Cohen can X's and O's them into a win. This is one of the games where the Broncos, Jimmys, and Joes are probably a little bit too much for them to handle, I would guess.
All right, can I make my case, though? Can I make my case for why I think that this is actually, I want to see what the Jags can do in this game. When you go back and you watch what the Packers offense was able to do for the first half of that game last week, and then just overall, I thought the Packers were able to move the ball. The Packers had some really nice moments offensively. I actually think a lot of what the Packers did last week and a lot of what the Jags have been doing since the bye are some of the areas where you can get after the Broncos a little bit. Very specifically, the touchdown to Josh Jacobs last week from Green Bay. Travis Etienne.
That is his brother's name.
Trevor Etienne is a person.
I knew that. But the Travis Etienne touchdown last week, they motioned to it, but it's essentially the exact same concept that the Packers used to score a touchdown in the high red zone last week, getting a linebacker in man coverage in that situation. Even some of the stuff that they've been hitting, I love. So since the bye, Trevor's been throwing 41% of his passes 10 yards or more in the air, which is the 4th highest rate in the league. And Derrik, you and I have talked about this a bunch, where I love this version of him. Like, at his most frustrating in his career, it's been because the offense has been a little bit too condensed. He's getting rid of the ball really quickly. Them pushing the ball downfield and almost scheming aggressiveness into him, I've really liked that. And even some of the specific stuff that they've done. I'm thinking about, like, the big corner route out of 12 personnel that Brenton Strange hits against the Cardinals. Like, that's exactly the type of down the field stuff where you can get some gashes against this Broncos team if you're picking on the linebackers and the safeties. And so I do think the natural way the Jags want to play and some of the designer stuff that they've done is actually the way that you can get a handful of explosives against this Broncos team. I do think that path is there.
I think it could be there because, like, again, like Riley Moss down the field, I think is decent, but you can get him a couple of times. That's one. You mentioned the corner out to Brenton Strange. One of the Packers' best plays last week was they had Luke Musgrave running like a over that he turned back into a corner route against Talanoa Hufanga, which
exactly.
Hufanga is going to drive on every crossing route and every dig route in front of him, which I think in a lot of cases does take things away for the quarterback or forces tight windows. And I do think I think that specific thing, like Hufanga's ability to drive on routes, is going to create a volatility in this game. There's a chance that Trevor and Liam Cohen do a really good job of attacking that, and they get 2 or 3 chunk plays off of that. Maybe they get him driving down, they throw a post route over the top, something like that. I also think there's a chance that Trevor is a little bit reckless over the middle of the field and gives Hufanga a chance, whether he takes it or tips one up to somebody else. Like, I do think for as well as Trevor's playing, he's a little bit more heller high water than even Jordan Love can be into tight windows sometimes.
I love how Derrik is seeing into his future right now. Like, he's making peace with what could happen in this game ahead of time.
Here's what I'm going to call Derrik on right now. Derrik talking about Trevor and the Jags in this game feels like me talking about the Bears.
He's hedging his bets.
Yeah,
he's
I am a little bit
hedging so hard right now, and I'm actually a little bit disappointed in him.
I will say, go ahead, Derrik.
I'm scared now that they're good. It's to the point where it's like it's easy to talk up the Jaguars when it's a little bit theoretical. When it's a little bit theoretical, and I'm picking moments, and I'm like, guys, I swear that he's good. And like, I do think he's really good, but this does feel like a bad matchup where it's like, oh man, this could be a little bit of a step on the rake game.
To Robert's point, Denver has allowed an explosive to a tight end in 10 of 14 games this year. And we saw the Packers had their moments last week. Zach Ertz gave them fits in that Sunday night game. It was Sunday it was Sunday night.
Yep.
Gave them fits a few weeks ago. So I do think that is a place where Brenton Strange could take advantage of them. The running backs too, worth mentioning. It sounds like Bashul Tootin might not play in this game. I think
which is kind of a bummer because that pony personnel stuff they were doing last week was actually really fun.
I think those two guys on the field between Talanoa Hufanga, Dre Greenlaw's a great player, and Alex Singleton too, but like you can get those guys in coverage.
Specifically, you can get those guys.
Not having both of those running backs available, I do think that's a sneaky big part of this, but I do think the Jags can take advantage of that.
The tight end stuff specifically, the Jags, since their bye week, lead the league in EPA per dropback out of 12 personnel. And the Broncos play mostly based to 12 personnel. They did last week against the Packers. I'll be curious if they do that against Jacksonville, or they dare them to run it with lighter bodies on the field. That'll be an interesting kind of matchup thing. The other interesting matchup thing I'm watching, Derrik, if you're Vance Joseph in this game, does Pat Surtain travel with Brian Thomas Jr. or Jakobi Meyers?
Honestly, Jakobi Meyers.
I think so too.
Take away Trevor's safety blanket, because if you do that, you might get one or two plays where Brian Thomas Jr. just cooks Riley Moss or Jaleel McLaughlin if he's in the slot, whatever. I can live with that. I cannot live with like 12 Jakobi Meyers targets where he's just getting 8 yards a pop, 12 here, 14. I can't live with that. That's a way to lose the game.
We did the same thing for the Packers preview too. And it makes sense to highlight. And I think that's right. But as soon as you say that, I'm just like, okay, Riley Moss is going to get targeted on like 3 downfield shots to BTJ, and hopefully he wins 2 of the 3.
My thought is those happen anyway.
They probably do.
It just matters. Right. It depends on who's covering him, because against man coverage, and so that was one of the things we said going into the Colts game. The Jags, even with Jakobi Meyers on the field, they've been much better throwing the ball into windows than they had against man coverage. Over their last couple games, they've been cooking 0.76 EPA per dropback over their last 2 games since we last talked about them struggling against it. And I thought the plan specifically against the Jets last week was awesome. Just what they were doing out of stacks and bunches, motions, just really good stuff from Liam Cohen. And a part of that formula is a couple shots to Brian Thomas Jr. down the field. And so I expect the Broncos to play a healthy amount of man coverage in this game, and I expect the Jags to test them down the field, especially if that's Riley Moss, multiple different times over the course of this one.
And one small thing to the motion and shifting guys around part, a couple of Green Bay's best plays last week were when they were shifting guys across and getting into like late trip stuff and forcing Jaleel McLaughlin to communicate. And then he got a little bit lost in coverage. There was one time where they got like a wheel route back behind him. They hit a flat route, I think on 3rd down doing that, and he didn't realize he was supposed to go cover the flat. So potentially getting him to like take a beat to think, I think could help them out as well.
I'm excited to watch this matchup. It might just be a bloodbath up front, and it might just be a non-starter like Derrik is worried about, even though, again, I think he's trying to steel himself a little bit. But I do think that there are some elements of this that are compelling. We exist in a world, and I think a lot of people that listen to a show like this probably have NFL Ticket or Red Zone or go to a sports bar on Sunday, so you'll see it. But the average NFL viewer not having easy access to this sucks, because the Broncos are the favorite to be the top seed in the AFC, and the Jags, they're right there if they win this game, by the way. Like, the Jags are still in play to be the top seed in the AFC, and you already said it, what a big test for them to prove that they belong in that conversation. And the fact that few people are just going to be able to flip on their TV and just have it on a basic channel, it's a bummer. Let's get to the other side of the ball here. Derrik, my favorite part about this matchup, and I should have known this faster because I do inherently know it, but I was looking at some of the coverage menu stuff from the Jags this year, who are primarily a zone team, and I was like, oh, there's a lot of shared DNA with the Packers, and it's just like, oh yeah, you moron. Like Anthony Campanile was an assistant on the Packers last year. Like it is the same sort of defensive DNA. And so the Broncos playing against a defense with a lot of similar principles, ideas, the way that they want to attack things 2 weeks in a row, I think is kind of like the first point I had in mind when thinking about that side of the ball.
Which I think, again, makes it a good, like, do-it-again game, where it's like you're getting something pretty similar in a defense that I think has had some pretty good moments this year, and for them to be able to go prove that, I think is nice. I thought Sean Payton called, like, what felt like a perfect game against the Packers. I thought he was incredible. Like, some of the stuff that they were doing to, obviously in the passing game, they had a really good day, but I thought even in the run game, there were a couple of moments where they would load the formation into the boundary, the short side of the field, trips, tight bunches, whatever it was. And then they would get it to where, whatever reason, Green Bay was aligning their nickel still to the field. Like they wanted pass coverage to that side. And so the Broncos were like, all right, if we know that you're going to do that, then we'll just run at you. And they did a really good job of like attacking that weak part of the run fit. They had like 4 or 5 pop runs that way. So you had that on top of, I thought the passing game obviously was really good. Knicks, I think there are a couple of things that I want to say about Bo Nix. One, obviously, all the stuff that he was doing creation-wise I thought was really impressive, but there was actually a sequence in the fourth quarter that felt very, in a good way, not Bo Nix-like to me. With 9 minutes left in the fourth quarter, they had a 3rd and 2. They run a double China concept. So your number 3 runs a deep corner route, and then the 2 guys outside of him run these like 5-yard just in routes under it. And they've got man coverage. And so it's 3rd and 2. Everyone's going to be open. Just throw one of your little fin routes and let's get the first down. And I think in most cases, that's what Bo Nix typically would do. He throws the corner route to Courtland Sutton. He doesn't get it, but they convert the next play. But in my mind, I was like, them being that aggressive in that moment, knowing that he's got the 4th and 2 after that, I'm like, you know what? I did not think that he would do that previously. And so for him to do that, I thought it was actually a pretty cool moment.
He felt very ambitious in that game, which is the
in a way that he rarely
comes back to it. Yeah.
Yes.
I think that the ambition as a passer was there for a reason. I do want to dig into that when we think about how the Jags are going to approach the Broncos in this game. Some of the ways the Packers did, I thought was surprising. But back to like the Bo Nix, just again, what felt important about his performance last week. I think the willingness to push the ball down the field in so many of those situations. And the one element of his game that when we talked about the Raider game and we kind of had some friction about how we processed that game and the performance he had a couple weeks ago, I thought that the most important or impressive element of what he did against the Raiders that showed up again against the Broncos is what he's doing off platform and as like a creative player somewhat out of structure. If you go back and you look at the numbers from last year, Bo Nix did a lot of scrambling and he had a lot of production on throws outside of the pocket. I want to say he was up near the top of the league, may even led the league in passing yardage outside of the pocket last year. But those plays were coming in 2 specific buckets that I think are worth acknowledging. One, design rollouts. Like the Broncos were using a ton of design rollouts for him as part of the offense last year. And 2, it's when he was escaping pockets that he didn't really need to escape. I thought that he pulled the ripcord a little bit too quickly last year. Even if he was doing a lot of work outside of the pocket, I still didn't find him to be a very creative player. But if you watch what he's doing right now, it's the Raiders game was a good example. And then some of the stuff he was doing, either running around or just changing arm angles kind of late in the down, manufacturing windows against the Packers, that stuff was impressive. And so when you combine that with the willingness to push the ball down the field, we're getting somewhere with like what he's giving you as an offense. And I think that's been really exciting to watch over the last couple weeks.
That little flick that he had to Evan Ingram on 3rd and 13, I come back to as like, it was like a 4-yard pass, and Evan Ingram did the vast majority of the work, but the way that he like dodged pressure and just sort of flicked it at his hip level, I was like, that's great. And it's creative and it's problem solving, and it gets you into a place where I think they went for it on 4th and 1 on the next snap because he got that much yak, but type of stuff you really like to see.
What I was surprised, Derrik, about what the Packers did last week is they played a decent amount of single high. And even when they weren't playing single high, I think one of the big chunk touchdowns came against quarters when you do have what amounts to a one-on-one matchup in certain looks. And exactly what you were saying. The Broncos were doing a lot of trips to one side into the boundary, and then they'd have the isolated X receiver to the other side. It was Courtland Sutton most of the time. And they were picking on those one-on-one matchups pretty consistently. And I just wouldn't give them those one-on-one matchups. Like the Jags play a ton of cloud coverages. They play more cover 6 specifically, which is quarter, and the half to the other side of the field, than any team in the league not coached by Vic Fangio. And that is like the Vic Fangio thing. And so they are comfortable playing in some of these softer zone coverages. The Packers are too, but they didn't do a lot of it last week. And so my mind goes to this place of, I don't want them to be able to gash me down the field. Like, I want to make sure that I'm making them bite it off chunk after chunk, because I think that pushes them to a place where you see that lack of ambition. And so I think that's the version of the Broncos offense I want to make them be if I'm the Jags in this game.
That's how I feel as well. Like, they are an offense where if you play a lot of too high, you make them play what's in front of you, all that sort of stuff, they can sometimes lull themselves into a sleepy game plan where they're kind of just chipping away at the run game. They're hitting these 4 and 5 yard passes, throwing their swing screens, and like, they'll control the ball fairly well. They just won't get enough explosives to make good on it. And if you're going to be one of those ball control teams, you have to be like perfect on every play. And I think their passing offense is good, but it's not the perfect degree where you can do that consistently every game. And so I would try to avoid giving them those one-on-ones. It is tough with some of the formation into boundary stuff, because if you're having Courtland Sutton into the field, the wide side being the number one receiver, there's just so much space there. It's hard not to just take your one-on-one and pray that your corner can hold up. But because otherwise you're then having to take another defender kind of out of the box, out of the run fit to go and help inside. But so that's why again, that goes back to why I think Sean Payton kind of pitched a perfect game. But I'm interested to see how the Jaguars try to combat that this time around.
Let's get to our next one here. Patriots at Ravens. Ravens are 3-point favorites at home against the Patriots. Dave, why is this a game of the week?
The old guard versus the new up-and-comers?
2 weeks in a row.
2 weeks in a row, yeah.
It is funny that Drake May had to play Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson in back-to-back weeks.
Hey, Drake May, you fell just short against the team that's owned your division for the last 6 years. Now go do the multiple-time MVP. And we've been waiting for this forever. I don't even want to say it, but come on, Ravens. Can we find an extra gear? Can we look like a team that's worth taking seriously? We've been waiting for it for a minute. You pitch a shutout, and I know the Bengals have issues, but you pitch a shutout against the Joe Burrow Bengals. My eyebrows are going up. I'm listening. I'm like the early part of the Vince McMahon meme. I'm like, oh, okay, what do we got over here? But now can we kick it up a gear?
So Derrik and I talked about that game on The Hangover. And obviously you look at the box score and you look at the final score and you think, all right, that's a drubbing. That's really impressive. The Bengals still moved the ball pretty efficiently that game, and they stubbed their toe a lot in plus territory. It's not to take anything away from the Ravens. It's more just to like kind of reframe or recontextualize what the Ravens are right now. And why that feels important to me is the Ravens are 3-point favorites in this game. I just don't know that the Ravens, I guess that at home, like that's a half point, right? If we're playing that game, do we feel like the Ravens are a better team, Derrik, right now than the New England Patriots? Do you think that?
Man, probably not. Like, even with some of the flaws that the New England Patriots team has, like, I still probably would favor the New England Patriots. If you guaranteed me 100% Lamar Jackson, then obviously it's a different calculation, but he's not that right now. So I would probably take the Patriots.
Let's talk about the Ravens offense and use that as a way to kind of further this conversation, because I think that is where some of my concerns about this exist and my concerns about the Ravens ceiling exist. I think Lamar looked as healthy as he's looked since he got hurt last week against the Bengals. When he showed some explosiveness as a scrambler, I thought he looked better throwing the ball down the field than he's looked in a very long time. My issue, Derrik, about this Ravens team and the level that I just don't think they have, it goes beyond Lamar Jackson. Like, I feel like they can't run the ball on their own terms. I don't trust a lot of the receiving options. They don't feel nearly as dynamic out of some of those 12 personnel sets as they did last year. And so I think we've done this too often, and I'm guilty of it with the Ravens this year, where it's like, if Lamar is healthy, they can get to that, oh shit, we're coming for you level. And Dave, I'm just not sure I believe that anymore. I'm not sure Lamar's health is the only necessary component for them to get to that place where I'm afraid of them.
I think it would be. Like, if you could guarantee me fully healthy Lamar, I think it would be enough. I tend to doubt we're going to get that at this point in the season. Especially, he's dealing with flu-like symptoms this week, which, you know, it's December 18th. Like, that's hardly surprising, right, with what we know about Lamar. But between that, and he might look better, But I don't buy that he's fully healthy. And when you're playing a game every 7 days, I just don't know when you're going to get to that level.
But here's my question. Him not running, right? And him not being a design runner as part of the offense. If we're comparing the Bills offense and the Ravens offense right now, I think I'm more inclined to give the quarterback will get us there benefit of the doubt to the Bills.
Yes.
Because of what Josh Allen is doing with his legs and the fact that the Bills have like an engine of the offense because of their ability to run the ball down to down. If Lamar's not going to be scary on the ground,
yes,
and he's not going to have that like supernova feel to him in the way that Josh Allen does, why are we in a place where if the quarterback is right, that's all that matters with the Ravens?
And the reason I say that is just because like Josh is at his full power and you see what that can do. And I know that the Bills running game is fantastic as well, but if Lamar's not fully healthy, does he have access to enough of the stuff that makes him great to make the rest of the offense threatening? I guess that would be my point.
I guess my question is, how convinced are we that the lack of him running is solely based in his health? It's hard to know.
That's the thing is I think it's more at this point like protective of his health. Because
Sure.
I actually think
Yes.
last week as a scrambler, I won't say 100%, but he looked dangerous enough where it's like this can be a problem against a lot of teams.
That's kind of what I mean.
But they don't want to use him as a runner. And so that's why I do think the Bills thing is important. Like the Bills, they have an identity in the run game. They're going to put either a 6 offensive linemen or 3 tight ends out there. They're going to run a bunch of duo at you. They're going to grind you down 6 yards at a time. James Cook is going to pop one of them. When the Ravens try to do that, they might get 1 or 2 Derrick Henry pops, but their grind you down runs are not 5 and 6 yards. They are 2 yards. They might get hit in the backfield. Like it's just a different calculation. And it puts a lot more pressure on Lamar Jackson to be this like, okay, bud, you've got to go carry the offense, drop back 35 times a game. And it's a really hard way to live if he's not going to be fully 100% and not have that many great passing options to go to right now.
Read the stat, Robert.
So the Ravens not having like an engine on the ground, we see that when we watch them play. The numbers for the Ravens running game are hilarious this year. So far this season, the Baltimore Ravens have the 6th lowest rushing success rate in the NFL. Bottom 6 for the Ravens. They are 2nd in EPA per carry from the top. Dude, how that is possible?
That's incredible.
That's hard to do.
It makes like sense if you watch them though. Go watch the Bengals game back, and it's Derrick Henry and Keaton Mitchell ripping off 24-yard runs, or Lamar Jackson scrambling for a good chunk, or nothing. Like everything that's not a huge chunk is getting 3 yards or less.
So some of that is quarterback runs, because the quarterback runs are just inherently efficient, and so that plays into it. But even on running back only runs, they are 9th in EPA per carry despite being bottom 5 in success rate. And so you look at the explosive runs they're getting. On outside runs this year, they have 10 plays where a runner has hit 20 miles an hour. Only 2 other teams have more than 5. The Dolphins with Devin Achane have 6. And so they need to be explosive. And I guess my question is, even if they're not going to be efficient in this game, based on the current state of the Patriots running or rush defense, do we think the Ravens can find 2 or 3 explosive runs in this game?
I think that's their key to winning this game is the Patriots have a woeful run defense since Milton Williams got hurt. And I know that's not the hugest sample size in the world, but over the last few weeks, New England's 30th in rush EPA per play and 31st in rushing success rate. So however you choose to look at it, you can get them on the ground. And I would hazard to say, and I know that the Patriots are a good team, but if they can't get something resembling the Ravens offense that we got used to last year going here, then I'm out on it. And to go back to the point about Lamar, I guess the thing that would give me confidence that he's, for whatever reason, just not that guy, even his pressure to sack ratio is crazy this year. Like it's 26.5%, which is a full 4% higher than any other year of his career. So even when he's moving as a necessity to get away from the pass rush, he's not doing it nearly as well as what we've gotten used to. And whether that is to protect him, which I totally understand, or because he just can't do it right now, I watch him, and I thought he looked good against Cincinnati, but I watch him and he just doesn't look like the force of nature that I got used to watching. And so I do think you probably have to lean on the run a little bit more. And if you can't do it in a matchup like this, maybe it's just not your year.
The other element of this, before we get to the other side of the ball, the Ravens have seen more man coverage than any team in the NFL this year, which is not surprising. It's also, this is a really good example of my pet theory that I think scrambling quarterbacks against man coverage is overblown. Lamar's scramble rate against zone coverage is significantly higher than it is against man coverage this year. And that, if you look at it, like that is true for a lot of quarterbacks. And so the idea that we can't play man against a scrambler, I think we have some data that kind of flies in the face of that, but that's an entirely separate conversation. Whether the Patriots can play man coverage in this game the way they want to, Derrik, becomes a question because they're a little bit banged up at corner.
Yeah, they're extremely banged up, which is why, like, I know I said at the top, I might think the Patriots are a better team. The particular injuries that the Patriots have does let this be a pretty good Ravens game. Obviously, Dave just laid out like all the run game stuff. We didn't even get to like both of their starting linebackers are hurt right now or did not practice on Wednesday, which could be an issue for them. So you add that on top of like, okay, maybe we miss a couple of run fits and Derrick Henry goes crazy. And then in the passing game, if Christian Gonzalez is going to be your only truly healthy like starting corner, obviously he can take one guy away, but I do think like if you could really get hands on everybody at the line of scrimmage with Marcus Jones, Carlton Davis, and really force the play to get into that like third second of the play and force Lamar Jackson to hang on to the ball. If he's not going to be 100% as a scrambler, we know how bad this Ravens offensive line has been and how quietly good the Patriots pass rush has been. I think that's where this game could get a little bit away from them. But again, that depends on the health of these corners.
The last point here, this is a battle of the movable force versus the stoppable object. And I guess movable object and stoppable force is what I meant to say.
The bad version.
Yes. We have one of the worst red zone offenses in the league going against one of the worst red zone defenses in the league.
The Ravens are 31st. They're scoring a touchdown on 44% of their red zone trips. The Patriots allow a touchdown 75% of the time their opponent gets into the red zone. And you saw it last week. We shouted it out, and the Bills went 5 of 6 in the red zone. So whoever gets the better of that, it's going to go a long way. I can't wait. 75% is just,
that is wild.
It's a wild number, but it really hasn't been a strong point for the Ravens this year. So it's a new opportunity to turn over a new leaf.
Let's get to the other side of the ball here. When the Patriots have the ball in this game, Derrik, do we think that we can learn anything moving forward from what the Bills did in the second half against the Patriots? Or do you feel that's a situation where a team pulls out kind of a bespoke game plan mid-game and catches an offense flush, and maybe there aren't that many lessons to be taken from it?
That's kind of more how I feel. Like I think the Bills did do a really good job of getting hands on people and putting too high coverage in the second half of that game. And I do think that threw the Patriots off a little bit. Part of what they've done really well this year is throw the ball down the field. But that to me felt like they kind of got caught. And also I think part of me is just like, I think Drake May and this offensive staff are so kind of ahead of the curve and continuing to get better that I just feel like one game plan is not going to like sync. Like teams are not going to be able to necessarily get on them over that for the rest of the season. I also think one interesting part in terms of trying to maybe pace that game plan from last week onto how this Ravens team is going to go. I think what the Bills did really well last week in the second half of that was obviously some of the coverage stuff, but they also did a really good job of condensing the pocket with some of their longer edge players and then also occupying the back with some of their blitzing linebackers and stuff. The Ravens don't blitz a ton, and granted, neither do the Bills. But I do think schematically you're going to have to see, okay, can they occupy the running back well? But then the edge part is where I just don't think that they have it. Like the Bills do have long edge players that can kind of condense you and keep you in there. I'm not so sold that the Ravens really have that caliber of pass rush right now.
Yeah, I mean, Draymond Jones is kind of one of those guys, but then Mike Green is like an undersized second.
He's the exact opposite.
So,
yes.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's like I'm with you though. I think when I look at what the Ravens are, and if you think about some of the coverages that the Bills were playing, like living in some of that in that too high stuff, the Ravens are very comfortable doing that. I think the difference is when you look at the way that the Bills are playing 2-man in the second half of that game, some of like the variations of cover 6 they were playing in that game. On the other side, to the quarter side, Maxwell Hairston is like pressed on the line of scrimmage against Kayshon Boutte, disrupting timing. The Bills, for a zone-heavy team, press their corners at a really high rate, and so they're comfortable kind of living in that world and disrupting the timing of the passing game that way. The Ravens don't necessarily play that way, and so I don't think that part is as applicable maybe as some of the other aspects of the game plan, but I feel like the pressure plan and some of the simulated pressure plan where you're sending an off-ball player through the B-gap to occupy the back, hopefully Kyle Hamilton like a good amount of times in this game. I do think that has to be part of what the Ravens do, because if they're going to try to bring a traditional fore against what the Patriots are right now, their pass rush isn't good enough and the Patriots offense is too good. I think you get shish kebab if you play that way.
I think that's totally fair. And the pressure plan's going to matter. And if you can't even make Drake May uncomfortable, it might be a long day. But I do just want to shout out the Ravens back seven. I got really excited watching them against the Bengals. Like rewatching that game. We've brought him up consistently throughout the season, but Nate Wiggins rules. Nate Wiggins is a dog. I love watching that guy play. Obviously, we all know about Kyle Hamilton. Chido Awuzie's been like a really underrated signing for them. I know he's on a 1-year deal. I would try to bring that guy back depending on the price. I mean, he's an older player, so it shouldn't be hard. And then Malachi Starks seems like he's coming on. He made a play on Yoshivash in coverage in that game that made me make noises at my laptop. I was just like, "Ooh, okay, Malachi Starks." So I'm very excited to watch these coverage players go against the Patriots receiver core. Has been fine. It's been fun. I like a lot of what they got going on. Diggs has been better than I thought he would be. Kayshon Boutte's been awesome for them, but this could be a fun matchup where I think these guys could hang with what the Patriots have as far as pass catchers go.
I'm with you on the secondary, and I think Alohi Gilman had a really nice game last week, too. I mean, there are a couple of plays where he's coming like all the way downhill on a crosser as the post safety. And that group overall, they got Darius Washington back in some spots last week, and so they've got some depth and flexibility. They had like a 3 safety look on like a 3rd and 13 in that game last week. They can do a lot of stuff back there. It's unfortunate that this version of the Ravens secondary happens at the exact time they don't have enough pass rushers.
I find myself watching the Ravens being like, all right, where are they going to draft and which rushers are going to be available to them? Because that feels like a very obvious pairing when it comes to the draft.
Draymond Jones has been their best pass rusher since they traded for him by a lot when you look at the production, and I don't know if that's where you want to be. Draymond Jones is like a very nice complementary piece in your overall rotation. He cannot be your best individual pass rusher.
It's when Draymond Jones is your 3rd best guy and can be like your pocket pusher, your bully. He's awesome. When he's your ace, that's not really where you want to live as a potentially really good defense.
All right, we're going to take our first quick break and then come back and hit one thing from a few more of these Week 16 games. This episode of the Athletic Football Show is brought to you by our friends at Facebook. Every year around the holidays, there's that moment when you realize you want your gifts to actually mean something. Not just another item off a list, but something that shows you really get the person you're giving it to. And that's kind of what Facebook's reminding us all this season. It's not just about staying connected online. It's about embracing all possible connections that Facebook unlocks. Maybe you're doing a Secret Santa at work, and you scroll through your coworker's Facebook profile and notice they're a huge vinyl fan. Next thing you know, you're on Marketplace, finding that vintage jersey signed by your favorite player from a local seller. Or maybe you join a group where people share their favorite gift ideas at the best spots to see holiday lights around town. Those small moments, a comment, a message, an idea you stumble onto, can end up becoming something bigger. That's what Facebook's all about this season, reminding us that a little connection goes a long way. So whether you're finding the perfect gift, reconnecting with an old friend, or just sharing a little holiday spirit, Facebook is where those connections start. Let's reconnect this holiday season with Facebook. Let's start with Packers-Bears. The only reason this isn't a game of the week is that it was a game of the week 2 weeks ago. And so doing like the full game of the week treatment on a matchup we just saw didn't feel like the right use of our time, but you absolutely could have pinned this as one of the games of the week. The implications of it are massive.
This is Robert hedging, Derrik, just to be fair.
Yeah, hiding it a little bit in this section.
He's like, we don't need to give it the full treatment because there's too much on the line.
I mean, we just had two extended conversations about this game like 10 days ago. It just didn't feel like the right use of time.
Basically the same game minus Micah Parsons and minus some receivers for the Bears.
I know, which we can dig into in a second. But Derrik, this is all you, buddy. The one thing you were watching in Bears-Packers on Saturday.
Hey!
God, that feels weird.
That's growth right there.
The only reason I know that is because I've like built my Saturday evening plans around it. It had to.
That good man. So for me, this is it has to be about Micah Parsons not being there, right? So I think if any team lost a pass rusher of this caliber, the automatic response would be like, okay, we got to turn up the dial as a pass rushing unit. I think that is especially true when you talk about Green Bay, where their non-Parsons pass rushers have been pretty bad all year. And even if you compare it to this last Bears game, Parsons had 8 pressures in that game. Nobody else had more than 3. And so obviously you would think, okay, we got to turn it up. The problem is that in both years that Hafley has been there, they have not really been a team that sends 5 or 6 pass rushers a lot. And this year they have the 5th lowest blitz rate. Like, it's just not, they'll do simulateds and funky stuff and get to their 4th rusher in a weird spot.
They're creative but not aggressive.
Yes, great way to put it. They'll do weird stuff, but you're ultimately still getting 4 rushers a lot of the time. And a lot of that this year specifically was built on they would drop Parsons in weird ways and manipulate the pass rush plan because of that. Obviously, that's going to be off the table. And so I'm wondering how much they turn up the dials in terms of blitzing. The problem is that Caleb is pretty good against the blitz. He is 7th in EPA per dropback this year, 4th in explosive pass rate, and he scrambles more than anybody in the league against the blitz. His success rate is a little bit lower because he will try to take those chunks, but that's just more of like a play style thing, not really like a he doesn't see it. That's just like a he's going for the home runs. And so I do worry with some of these Packers secondary players, them not being able to get home, trying to throw these extra bodies at him. We might get like a pretty gash or be-gash kind of game.
It's interesting because I think that the second half plan last week where they used play action on, like, it was 2 weeks ago. Second half plan 2 weeks ago where they used like 70% play action, the Bears did in the second half of that game. I think some of that is driven by we need to just wad stuff up and make sure that the protection plan is right with extra bodies on top of this being a good counter off of the run game. So when Parsons was not going to play him, my thought was, did they maybe spread it out a little bit more than they were willing to in the second half of that game? But now, without Burden and Rome, I actually think being in heavier personnel, running the ball a shitload, and trying to be in 12 and living in play action, even without Parsons, might be the correct approach in this game.
The Colston Loveland game.
I joked about it earlier today. I want 50 runs and 12 Colston Loveland targets. That's what I want the game plan to be.
I mean, it's bear weather, right? It's actually not going to be as cold as you might guess for a mid-December game in Chicago, but still, lean into the bit.
The other part, just I'm making this a game of the week by sheer force. The Bears last time they played this against the Packers, the pressure plan and what they did when blitzing was disgusting, like truly disgusting. There is a play on the Christian Watson touchdown where you watch it. It's supposed to be cover 0. They bring 7. Jalen Johnson is in no man's land because the tight end he's supposed to be covering in man coverage blocks. And so he's just kind of standing there. So it's 3 guys with no safety help on the other side. And the Bears send 7 guys. Montez Sweat trips the nickel. And so 2 of those guys fall down. And Jordan Love is just standing back there in the pocket against cover 0. And so I think they tried the we're going to throw bodies at the problem version of this. The let's just play coverage and kind of hang on to our hats version of this, I think is the correct approach this time, based on how the last game went.
Is this like you just want to see what it looks like so that if they run into them in the playoffs, they have the right answer going into that?
I think that them just trying to say like, hey, like, let's just play a bunch of zone and hope that he doesn't see an underneath defender and we can get one. Like, that's probably the right way to do this.
Which they did last time. Like, he threw one at them. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think that is the best path for this team, but I know the Packers are banged up. It's just a bummer to me. I more wanted to see Rome or Luther play in this game to just get a sense of where the Bears offense is against a defense like this. I understand that if you line it up and you do the ledger, both of these teams are very banged up in important places.
If you game this thing out, assuming the Bears make the playoffs, it looks very likely that we'll get an NFC North rematch in the playoffs. Like, that is a pretty high probability. So you can get your wish in a few weeks.
Let's get to our next one here. Bucks, Panthers.
Yeah, lean into the sickness.
God,
should we have put this on Sicko Street?
We honestly could have. I just looked at the Panthers having a 24% chance of making the playoffs at 7-7 and remembering they lost to the Saints last week and just being like, what is this team? My God. This is all you though, buddy. Dave, one thing you were looking for in Bucks Panthers this weekend.
I mean, this is the most obvious matchup of the week in terms of stakes because it's between these two for the NFC South. They're going to play twice over the next 3 weeks. So winning this game is huge. But the thing that interests me the most, and let's go back to Thursday night. We remember Kirk Cousins diced the Bucks. They win that game in Tampa, but we do the live reactions in the moment. Mm-hmm. So we often miss the immediate aftermath. Todd Bowles was furious at his team, particularly his defense coming right out of that game. And so my one thing for this game is, the Bucks season feels like it's on the brink just because they might miss the playoffs, but I'm very curious about the locker room dynamics at play here. So after this game, Todd Bowles says, you've got to care enough when this shit hurts. It has to mean something to you. It's more than a job. It's your livelihood. He later goes on to say, the coaches have done all they can do. It's on the players to execute and hold each other accountable. And there's a small select few not doing the little things right and holding themselves accountable. Next day, he kind of walks it back, as you might guess, because he was so mad after that game. But he talks to the media on Friday. Baker Mayfield, he tried to take accountability. He left a throw out there. He throws an interception in the fourth quarter. He's like, it's on me. Leave it with me. And told about that, Todd Bowles says, Baker can look himself in the mirror and be honest with himself. If everyone did that, we would figure out our problems real quick. Todd Bowles sounds like he hates his defense. Like that's where I come away from this.
Is it wrong or unfair for my response to that? To be, we're just trying to find the guy who did this. I don't.
That's a great chicken or egg question. I don't know.
There is an element.
Todd Bowles hates his defense.
Todd Bowles hates the guys who are running his defense. Apparently, I don't know.
I don't know. That's a tough one for me.
To me, there's an element of this that, like, I think it is a little bit of like a player acquisition thing in the sense of like they just have a lot of players who don't tackle, especially in the secondary and at corner. Like they just have a lot of guys who don't do it.
You think a lack of tackling is a player acquisition thing?
I think certain players do not like to tackle. Yes, and I think certain organizations are very good at identifying corners, especially who like to tackle.
Interesting.
I do think
that was always like a give a shit meter thing to me. In part.
It is, but I think.
But is give a shit is it like part of organizational DNA? I think is what
I think it is a little bit. Yes.
I think that the give a shit meter is often dependent on the coaching staff filling it up in the correct way.
So I agree with that too. It's just that I think that's how you piss off a defensive minded coach the quickest is by not tackling.
But my thing is like if your team is playing with a lack of effort and you are the head coach, I'm wondering like where you should be looking in that moment.
So let's take this another level deeper because I do think it's interesting. Zion McCollum goes out in that game. He's done for the regular season. He's on IR, so mathematically he can't come back until the playoffs at the earliest. Kendall Vildor, it fell apart. Not to say that Zion McCollum is holding up the Bucks defense, but it fell apart without him as that game went along. So you got Kendall Vildor, you got potentially Benjamin Morrison, who's missed the last 3 weeks due to injury, filling in at cornerback. And I just want to see if the Bucks can duct tape this thing back together. Wherever you want to lay the blame, they have not been playing very well defensively over the last few weeks. And that ties in perfectly with Jalen Coker having a phenomenal 2-week stretch here. He's got 134 yards and 2 touchdowns over the Panthers' last 2 games. This is the most diverse array of options Bryce Young has had this season, which is silly to say, but like they built their offense out of Teteroa McMillan. He's got 43% of their downfield targets and 48% of their downfield yards this year. Like Teteroa McMillan has been it for Carolina. So if Jalen Coker can keep this up and Bryce Young has time in the pocket, can he do to the Bucks what Kirk Cousins just did? And having watched that, I'm tempted to say yes.
Here's my thing about the Kendall Vildor, Zion McCollum thing. I understand that. Playing with backups is hard. Kendall Vildor was a backup last year, right? Yeah. Kendall Vildor played a decent amount last year for a Lions team that was decimated by defensive injuries. You know what the EPA per dropback from opponents was with Kendall Vildor on the field for the Lions last year? -0.3 with a 35.5% success rate. Losing Zion McCollum in favor of Kendall Vildor should not be a load-bearing piece for your defense succeeding or not.
And I would argue that it's not. Let's go back to this as well. I've said it before. Levante David has allowed a reception on 18 of 21 targets for 204 yards and 4 touchdowns over the last month. Like there are some issues with this Tampa Bay defense. Levante David, I think it's beyond fair to say Father Time is caught up. Servassier Dennis is potentially back for this game. That might not be a great thing. Tyke Smith is also probably back for this game, which I think is a big thing. So there's reason for optimism that you can staple this thing back together, but I think for a variety of reasons, the Bucs defense hasn't played well. And Todd Bowles has a hand in that too. I don't mean to absolve him completely, but I guess my point is, can you get your shit back together after a very public outcry? Not just the embarrassing result on the field, but clearly some frustration that boiled over. Can you tighten that back up in time to win a game that you have to win? The Bucs can get there if they don't, but it becomes much harder. You've got to win out. You've got to have the Panthers lose out. The winner of this game is in a much more enviable position.
Here's my concern with where the Bucs are right now if that can't happen. Doesn't this feel like the worst possible timeline for the 2025 Tampa Bay Buccaneers, like where we are right now? I know that some of the offensive struggles are based on injury. I don't want to dismiss that. But those guys were back last week. Mike Evans played last week. Jalen McMillan played last week. The offensive line's not 100%, but you got Worse back. You got Gadecki back. Like, you're a normal amount of injured up front. Bucky Irving is back. Right now, the Bucs are 19th in weighted offensive DVOA this year. And that's, I think, even higher than they are in a lot of raw metrics because they've played against a very tough defensive schedule. If you look at where the offense is in year one, N+1 from Liam Cohen, it's been disappointing. It's been frightening. This is one of those concerns you have when you lose a really good offensive coordinator 2 years in a row. So you combine those fears being realized with the defense by the end of the season, yet again, being in a place that you're concerned about. So truly, like, all of the things are falling into place here for this to be the exact place you did not want to end up as the 2025 Buccaneers. Do you think that's like too alarmist? Because that's how I'm feeling right now.
I'll take it a step further. Consider how the season started. The Bucs started the season 5-1. They started 2-0 in the division. It looked like they were going to have this thing locked up before we got to Thanksgiving. And now look at where they are. Todd Bowles signed an extension this summer. If they don't get this thing across the finish line, and let's just throw in the wrinkle that the OC that just got away is going to make him. He's cooking. They're 10-4. They're going to make the playoffs. They might do more than that. I think uncomfortable things are going to be on the table. I mean, people are going to be calling for Todd Bowles' job if this doesn't get across the finish line. And honestly, considering the way it finishes compared to how it started, even if they win the division and lose at home as a wild card, I don't think that's going to make people feel a whole hell of a lot better. So yes, it is. From September and October to now, it's one of the most jarring changes. Like, we talk about a season having multiple parts. This is one of the most drastic changes in the NFL, and for the worst. And yeah, like, if you don't manage to win this game, if you can't win the division, I think you could be talking about coaching change, coordinator change. Baker's got a year left on his deal, but all of a sudden that very rosy relationship doesn't quite look as rosy. Yeah, I think none of that is too alarmist to say with how it's gone.
Thanksgiving, I can't remember which game it was, Derek. We got a Monday morning call about the Bucs after they had a pretty underwhelming performance, and my response was kind of like, don't worry about it. Like, this team, the organizational health is still good. I wouldn't be worried. But over the past 3 weeks and what has happened since then, I've kind of changed my tune about that. Like, I am a little bit more worried than I was at the end of November based on how this late season stretch has looked for this team.
I'm probably a little bit more worried, but I still think with the offense, I can cope myself into it being fine once they're a little bit healthier next year.
It's not hard to do. You can talk yourself into it being first-year coordinator injuries, all that. Maybe they bounce back next year, but it's not a guarantee. Like, it's not like you got to squint to see it, and that's just not the place you want it to be. Let's talk about the next one here. Steelers-Lions. Derek, this is all you, buddy. One thing you're looking for in Steelers-Lions on Sunday.
I just kind of think this might be like a sneaky, weird game for the Lions defense. Like, I think when we think about what this matchup is...
Every Steelers game feels like a sneaky, weird game now.
They do that. They do that to you. And usually why that's weird is they will get into 12 and 13 personnel, or they'll bring another offensive lineman in. They'll be heavy, all that stuff. But for the Lions, that would actually be fine. They're a defense that likes to play in base. They like to have their backers on the field. That's not really that scary to them. But what we saw last week with the Steelers against the Dolphins is that with the Dolphins' secondary being the worst part of their defense, they were like, you know what? We're actually going to get into 11 personnel this week. They had, I think they played 53% of their offense out of 11 personnel that week, which was the highest the Steelers have played all season. And you might think that's a one-off game plan against the Dolphins, which maybe it could be. But the worst part of the Lions team right now is their secondary, because they're banged up to hell. They're playing random guys at safety. Avonte Maddox, who they brought in to be like a nickel depth, is playing safety again for them again. They're down to some of their other corners that they don't want to be at. Like this, I would probably run back the same game plan which again gets us back to just a weird spot with like, this is not who we thought the Steelers offense was going to be, and now they've got to go do this against the Lions. And then the one other point that I would want to make about this is that over the last, I think since week 10, the Lions are giving up a first down or a touchdown at the on completions that they allow on the 4th worst rate in the league. Granted, they've played a lot of really good quarterbacks since then, Stafford, Dak, Love, but they've looked completely hapless against those guys. And then even like Jameis Winston and stuff was like putting up some numbers against them. And so I'm a little bit worried that a mildly ambitious Aaron Rodgers, if we can get it, could give them some issues.
Do you attribute that mostly to how banged up the secondary is, or do you think that the issues run deeper than that with like the structure and the plan defensively?
And I think it's just injuries. I think when you run the defense that
I
they
agree.
run,
I liked what he was doing early in the season when they were even like moderately healthy.
100%. Like I think Kelvin Shepherd is a good play caller, and I like what he's done. It's just that because with Aaron Glenn last year, right, when they had some of the injuries and stuff, it was his 3rd, 4th year with that defense with a lot of those guys. It was a little bit easier to like patch that thing together. I think more recently with how banged up they've been, and then specifically over the last 3 weeks, how good the quarterbacks they've played have been. That's just I don't even know if I would trust the best defensive coordinators in the league to have pulled out a good one there.
I'm with you on that. Stakes wise, if the Steelers win this game, they all but lock up the division. And we didn't talk about that in the Ravens-Pats section.
With the Ravens lost to New England.
With the Ravens lost to New England. And so this is a massive week for the AFC North.
That's some tough whiplash. Not for like the Ravens team or coaches, but like if you're a Ravens fan, I think most people, the Lions are 7-point favorites at home. Most people would expect the Lions to win this game. If the Steelers find a way to win, this is a 3:30 game. Ravens are Sunday Night Football. You go into Sunday night now knowing if we don't win, we're cooked. Like
you did it to yourself.
I mean, fair, but that doesn't mean you want to win the division any less, right?
Sure, but I just at this point, like, there's nowhere else you can turn except inward. You lost to the Bengals and the Steelers.
The only thing more embarrassing than winning this AFC North is not winning this AFC North. So if that happens, it's not going to be fun for Ravens fans while they wait to see if they can beat the Pats.
Speaking of embarrassing, let's talk about the Cowboys defense. One thing from Chargers, Cowboys, this is all me. The Cowboys have been the get-right game for pretty much every offense they've played against recently.
They sure have.
Can they be the get-right game for the Chargers? That is my question. Going back and rewatching the Chargers offense against the Chiefs last week, watching the first half of that game, Derrik, I was at a place where I was like, this is over. Like, this is truly unwatchable. And I do think that the Chiefs specifically are a pretty bad matchup for the Chargers in this specific way. When the Eagles were eating up the Chargers on all of those blitzes and making life hard on them, that's the Eagles playing against type. That's how the Chiefs want to play. And so if you look at the pressure plan that the Chargers had in the first half of that game, the lack of hots, nobody is open. We've talked about how just lost the offensive line often looks at times when they're sorting out pressure. It was as bad as it can look in the first half of that game against the Chiefs. Really, the only thing that kept the Chargers afloat in that half is that Justin Herbert makes a truly insane, like disgusting throw to Trey Harris down the sideline and then comes back with the touchdown throw to Keandre Lambert-Smith where he looks like a superhero. Other than that, that offense was so inept in the first half of that game where I'm like, this thing is imploding in real time. In the second half, they actually had some answers for how they wanted to deal with pressure. They're getting rid of the ball quickly. They're underneath options consistently. I still have a lot of questions about like the overall health of the Chargers offense. There's not a lot of guys open right now, and combining that with how bad the offensive line and the pass protection has been, you're in a bad spot. But the way they played in the second half against the Chiefs at least gives me some hope that this can be a potential get-right game for them against the Cowboys.
I think my question would be like, get right like to what end? Like how good does get right get them?
Can you be as efficient as JJ McCarthy was last week?
God, I would hope so.
Can you score? I'd like to see the Chargers score 25 plus points in this game.
Yes.
Is that too much to ask?
Based on the results, I told you all this earlier, like a composite of quarterbacks who have played the Cowboys. Like if we just took every performance against the Cowboys and stretched it into a full season, it would be MVP caliber numbers. So Yeah, honestly, I mean, I think it would say something about what we can expect from the Chargers. Like, if they can't look better than what we've seen over the last 2-3, really most of the season, let's be honest. But
the last 2 weeks have been particularly bad. The Eagles game and the Chiefs game were concerning.
If they can't look a little more put together here, then it just doesn't give me a lot of hope for the postseason.
That's actually where I'm at. I think them having a really good day is not really going to do anything for me. If they score like 23 points in this game, I won't pick them against anybody in the playoffs for any reason.
That's probably what matters here. As let's get an understanding of like how bad or how not good, like how limited is the ceiling for this offense, even in a good situation as we get toward the postseason. That's probably the best question to be asking. It's always fun when we're doing the production meeting on Tuesday to plan this show, and one of us comes up with or suggests something that I had kind of in the back of my mind where I was just like, God, I love that. We're seeing things the same way. And Derrik wanted to do an under the hood about the Texans offense this week, just for us to kind of get a finger on the pulse of what this Texans offense looks like as we get toward the playoffs, because we know what the defense is. So we wanted to just do a little bit of a look at where the Texans are offensively to get a sense of, okay, do you clear the bar where you are actually threatening because of how dangerous the defense is? So when you went back and you watched the Texans over the last few weeks, Derrik, with CJ Stroud back in the fold, what was your answer to that question?
Kind of think the answer is yes. And they're going to be living they are an offense that I think right now only really operates with like explosives and haymakers. I do kind of think that's enough with how insanely good the defense is, because like the run game, it's still not good. They're really not helping anybody out. And then even the passing game, I think like they can be kind of efficient every now and then, but they are really hunting for 15-yard chunks, 20-yard chunks, Nico Collins catching runs and stuff like that. But I actually do think that they've gotten to a place where they can do that. Like, I think some of their shot play stuff is nice, and Nico Collins can really just make you right in a couple of instances, like the post route they threw to Nico Collins against the Chiefs. That's not even that good of a ball. Nico Collins just goes up and gets it. But in terms of the pure drop back passing game, I do think they found something a little bit, and I think they've done a better job of getting 4 and 5 out in the route concept and having everything flow back into CJ Stroud's vision, like pure progression type of stuff where he can start to one side, oscillate to the other side of the field, and they're getting him some good answers. And some of that has been designery third down stuff, which I think at times maybe that feels a little bit unsustainable. But the fact that they've tapped into that at all, where I think for the first 7-8 weeks of the season, I wasn't sure they had that. I'm kind of into what they have in terms of them having enough firepower.
The structure of the passing game has gotten to a place that I thought it would be coming into the season. Like they're condensed formations at one of the highest rates in the league, and they're using a lot of like trips and bunches at one of the highest rates in the league. And so I thought this is what they would be. It's been sort of circuitous and like what we were exploring. And because we talked about this early in the season, the offensive line was so bad early in the year that you're truly just trying to hang on for dear life. Like, it's what could possibly work to allow this offense to be functional. And now the offensive line, I was going to say is good enough, is not so bad that you're in that headspace and you can actually do the stuff you want to do. And so I agree with you in that I do think they found sort of their identity in the passing game. I think some of like the quick crossers they're trying to hit, whether that's to Nico, Aiden Hutchinson, to
Xavier Hutchinson. Aiden Hutchinson showed some nice hands against the Lions last week.
I'm like, it's amazing how old I'm getting and how fast I'm getting that old. Like, I used to make fun of Nate for not knowing anyone's name, and now I get 2 names wrong on every single show. Like, I've aged 20 years in the last 2 years. Here's my thing. I agree with you that they need the haymakers to get there. I still have concerns about like the overall foundation of the offense, because I think it's important for us to like really contextualize what the offensive line is. Just because it's not an atrocity doesn't mean it's good. This team is 31st over the last 3 weeks in rushing success rate. They are still actively bad at running the ball consistently. They are 31st in quick pressure rate allowed. When you watch their offensive line, there's a lot of big bodies. And so when they're doing some of these duo runs and it's like straight downhill, we got double teams, they can move some people, but they're big and they're stiff. And so in pass protection, they can struggle. And then anytime there's like a slanting front or some sort of run stunt, they usually struggle with it and it leads to negative plays. And so I think the offense is so volatile that while I think if you hit some of those haymakers with the defense, maybe you can get there. But I think I'm less optimistic about it overall than both of you guys are.
It's just the greatest bell curve conundrum of all time because the full disclosure, this is the way I looked at it. Like you see the Texans score 40 points on Arizona. You see Nico's 57-yarder. You're kind of getting excited. You saw Jawar Jordan had a 50-yard, cutback in this game. That was really fun. He had a nice day. And you're like, oh, all right, the offensive line's better. The offense is gelling. Like this is exciting. Then you go watch it back, and you're just like, oh, I don't know. It still looks a lot like what I remember from before CJ got hurt. But then
it's better.
The great equalizer.
It's better.
The great equalizer, though, the question posed for this thought exercise is like, can they do enough to give this defense a chance? And I think the answer is yes. That has a lot more to do with the defense than anything else. But like, if this group can get you to 20 points, then you've got a shot to beat almost anybody. I do think that's true.
And so here, you know what this reminds me of, actually? You know how with the early version of the Chiefs, we kind of did this where Patrick Mahomes and the offense were so good that it was like if
one stop.
Yes, it was like if Spags can get us one stop or turnover, we're going to win the game. It's a little bit like this is kind of the inverse of that, where it's like I know our defense.
One touchdown drive, like what's the goal?
Can you get
here?
one touchdown drive, get a couple of field goal drives? Our defense is going to give us one or two short fields. Like it really does feel like the inverse of that.
Here's where I'm at with this. I think that the Nico Collins, CJ Stroud explosive play potential, and they have some other playmakers that can give you that, right? I actually really think that getting Cade Stover back is helpful. Like having one more like capable pass catcher in 12 personnel is actually nice for this team.
The closest thing they have to a layup right now is like the boot stuff to Schultz and Cade Stover,
and I actually think
usually work.
Layups in that way are good.
Yeah.
Right. And so, but there are still some structural things about this offense that are so frustrating to me. They lead the league in jumbo personnel since CJ Stroud came back. It's like 26% of plays. They're averaging 3.8 yards per play out of those looks per next gen. They're running the ball 86% of the time when they're in jumbo personnel. That chunk you mentioned against the Chiefs, Derrik, that's out of jumbo. How about we get 2 or 3 of those a game, right? Because that's what you need to do. You need to be like swinging wildly to do it. And I will say the explosive potential has gone up this year because CJ right now is a better creator than he has ever been in his entire career. If you look at some of the things he's doing out of structure, off schedule, that does give them a little bit of juice in ways they haven't in the past. So far this season on extended dropbacks per next gen stats, so 4 seconds or longer, only Patrick Mahomes averaged a higher EPA per dropback than CJ Stroud. And those guys are in their own like territory. For almost every other quarterback in the league, those plays 4 seconds or longer are actively negative plays for the offense. For CJ and Patrick this year, they actually have been like neutral plays. And I think that speaks to just how much better he's gotten as a creator.
I think the other like minor thing I would in terms of how we view CJ Stroud that I would talk about this year, I think a lot of people remember that Seahawks game. And rightfully so. Like it was a big time game. It was the biggest they played all year. And I think people in their memories, like that's what the Houston Texans offense looks like. I think for most of the year, it has looked better than that. And especially since CJ Stroud has come back. And to your point, I think a lot of that is his comfort and confidence in playing outside of the pocket, I think has been really high. And I think even Nico Collins has made some impressive plays, like doing his end of the bargain on those, like the 53-yarder they hit against the Chiefs where CJ Stroud, it's a cover zero look, bails out to his right side, kind of whips it back across the middle to Nico Collins. Collins comes back like 5 yards towards the line of scrimmage to go get that. And like, I complain about this a lot. There's a lot of receivers who don't do that and they let DBs go and get the ball. And so the fact that they've got that chemistry there and that trust, I think is incredibly important if you're only going to swing for the fences the way that they do.
I think the Seahawks game is a great thing to bring up because at that point in the season, when you watch this offensive line and you watch CJ Stroud, it felt like there were 2 cinder blocks tied around his ankles. Now it's like there's 1 brick. Like this thing is weighing him down, but he is no longer drowning. That's how I would frame it.
I think he's a good enough player that if the offensive line gives him a chance, he can make them right enough times. And
he's doing that.
If this defense was run of the mill, I would not really be interested in talking about the Texans, but they are so good that once you get to 20 points, you've got a shot to beat any team you play, like 20, 21, 23 points. So yeah, like it ain't It's not as fun as I wanted it to be when we decided to do this, but I think it's good enough given how good they are on defense.
All right, let's go spend some time on Sicko Street. Doing something a little bit different today. I was looking at the schedule for week 16, and the Vikings are playing the Giants this week. And with the game that Tyler Shough had last week, I wanted to frame a bigger picture question to you guys rather than digging into these games. If you had to choose, Dave, between Jaxon Dart, Tyler Shough, and JJ McCarthy, so all first-year starters this year, to be your 2026 starting quarterback, which of those three guys would you choose?
So this is coming off of Tyler Shough's best moment to date. He beats
JJ McCarthy's.
JJ McCarthy's as well against Dallas. Should we start with JJ McCarthy? I'll just start with JJ McCarthy. Listen, it's nothing personal, but if this is the thought exercise, I can't. JJ McCarthy can't be the choice.
You think he's significantly further down the list than those other two guys for you right now?
I absolutely do. And this is the stat that I have to back me up. These three guys have started 24 games. Ironically, the two highest EPA per dropbacks of the three of them this season both belong to JJ McCarthy in the games against Dallas and Washington. Outside of that,
arguably the two worst defenses in the league.
Arguably the two worst defenses in the league. The four worst EPA per dropbacks, the four worst games played by any of these three quarterbacks are all JJ McCarthy. I don't mean to say this smugly. It really is nice to see him have some moments and build that confidence, but the bad from JJ McCarthy has so far so outweighed the good that couldn't have factored into my choice, especially when you consider this is a loaded Vikings team that we considered as a contender heading into the season. We don't have to imagine what's JJ going to look like with better pass catchers? That's not a thing. So
you don't think Devon Vele is as good as Justin Jefferson?
I don't. So no, I couldn't consider JJ as a real choice here. It was really between Tyler Shough and Jaxon Dart for me. And I was really tempted based on, everything we've seen. I've said it a million times at this point, but even going as far back as his start against the Rams, Tyler Shough has been really impressive for the situation that he's in, where he was drafted, all that good type of stuff. He's got the best turnover-worthy play rate among all rookie quarterbacks. His ADOT is right behind Jaxon Dart. He's willing to throw the ball downfield. He is 8th in passing success rate in the NFL since getting the job. That's incredible. He's firmly middle of the pack in EPA per dropback. The only thing that scares me with Tyler Shough is his pressure to sack ratio.
He gets sacked a lot. It's the highest in the league among full-time quarterbacks.
It's really tempting to say Tyler Shough, and I'm really impressed with what he's done. But then I went and watched Jaxon Dart's most recent game, and I'm about to talk out of both sides of my mouth here. I know he played the Commanders, just like JJ McCarthy did. I know the Commanders, they're right there with the Cowboys in terms of get-right opportunity. It's less about who he played, but just go turn on the Giants Commanders tape, considering that it was a snowy, blustery day at MetLife Stadium, just gross, nasty conditions. And there's Jaxon Dart he made 6 holy shit throws in that game. Whether it was the deep ball to Theo Johnson or the outbreaker to Wan'Dale Robinson that was all arm, 35-yard throw, all arm for a touchdown. I was just oh yeah, Jaxon Dart's just a phenomenal freaking athlete. He's 4 years younger than Tyler Shough, and I'm comfortable rolling with that. That's how I feel.
Derrik, where do you land on this?
So I thought I was going to land with Tyler Shough, and I think the more I thought about it, I'm probably not. There's a part of me that Jaxon Dart gives me pause.
We swayed him just since the production meeting.
No.
Oh, I thought you said you were going to roll with Shough.
No.
I kind of think I was. And I think if you framed it just as
interesting
2026, we need to just keep getting by, I might take Tyler Shough. I think he feels a little bit more like a pro adult quarterback right now. And there's a part of me that with Jaxon Dart, I get a little bit freaked out with how he consistently says that he's going to keep playing the way that he's playing. And I think with some of the health stuff, that is genuinely concerning. However, of the three, I think Jaxon Dart is the best athlete. And I think he's the most accurate. And on top of that, I do think there is a part of Jaxon Dart's game that I like the most compared to Tyler Shough. I think Tyler Shough is very good at, can we keep the offense rolling? Can we stay on pace? Can we take our checkdowns? All that stuff. Jaxon Dart to me is a more ambitious passer. And while that needs to be honed a little bit. I do think there is at least something there for him to work on. And so I'm a little bit scared of all three of these quarterbacks for different reasons. But there's at least part of me that if Dart stays healthy, it's like I can see more of the world where maybe he becomes like a top half of the league guy.
Is it Lord of the Rings? Is it Aragorn that says if you're not scared, you haven't been paying attention? I would hope you're a little bit scared of all of these guys, but I think Jaxon Dart is the best blend of like, I mean, we've seen some legitimately good stuff from him, and then the talent is undeniable. I just think the upside is highest with him.
I don't disagree with that. I think this is also, it speaks to how I'm wired and like my personal preference. I'm happy to cape for Tyler Shough here. And I just think that right now, and this is sometimes a fault of mine when I'm looking at players and I think, all right, I can see what this guy is. And I actually like the fact that it's more of certainty is hard to say about a first-year quarterback who started like a handful of games. But I think I have a better understanding of like what Tyler Shough is from the pocket right now. Like he is a more polished player from the pocket right now, I think considerably than Jaxon Dart is. When I watch Tyler Shough, you go back and watch that Panthers game, I love the rhythm that he plays with. Like you'll watch him read stuff out and it's just like first hitch, woof. First hitch front side, second hitch backside, woof. And I love that. Like that's what I want to see out of my quarterbacks fighting from the pocket. He's 26, right? And so he should hopefully see things a little bit better than Jaxon Dart does. But he does right now. And so I am willing to attach myself to that. And it's not like he doesn't have any athleticism. He's not nearly as twitchy as Jaxon Dart is, but as a straight line mover, we've seen what Tyler Shough can do. Like he can do stuff as a runner. He can do stuff as a scrambler. I think he's just a little less twitchy in the pocket, and that leads to some of the sack stuff. When I watch Tyler Shough right now, what he reminds me of is some of these like big arm pocket guys like Ryan Tannehill. Like that to me feels like the path forward for a guy like Tyler Shough. And I like me that kind of quarterback. Like I actually like stylistically, I believe in those sorts of guys. And so I do think you guys are right in that Dart is more talented. He's a better creator, like all of that stuff. I just kind of like the way that Tyler Shough is seeing stuff from the pocket. I think I would bet on Tyler Shough.
I do think this is like if you're trying to do the GM, like the best thing that you can do for your job is to like hold the job. I do think Tyler Shough actually makes more sense because I do think he's more put together right now. I'm less worried that he's gonna, run himself into concussions potentially the way that Jaxon Dart is. And he is a really good athlete. He ran a 4.63 at the combine. And he actually jumped out of the gym too. Like he's a really good athlete once he gets going, in the same way that Ryan Tannehill was. You had to get him outside of the pocket. You had to help him a little bit. But once he got there, he could take off for like 20 yards. And so I do think there's some of that there. But again, it just feels like if you want to swing for the upside a little bit, I do think Jaxon Dart has a little bit more of that. And to Dart's credit, his floor is not as bad as I thought it was. Like I thought he was going to be like unplayable coming into the season potentially.
I agree. He helps himself with the scrambling though. The scrambling has been a huge part of a floor raiser, but that's true for a lot of young quarterbacks. Like we see guys rely on their athleticism as a problem solver when they don't see it very clearly. I think with Dart, it's been pretty pronounced in almost as much as any young quarterback recently. Like Jaden Daniels saw it much better from the pocket last year than Jaxon Dart does. But even Jaden Daniels, I don't think relied on the scrambling to this extent the way that Dart has. When you remove scrambles, and I know that's a huge thing that you're removing, but when you take that away and you look at what Dart has done, he has a 40% success rate this year solely in structure from the pocket. That's ahead of only J.J. McCarthy, Russell Wilson, Cam Ward, and the Browns rookies. So he really has needed the scrambling to raise that floor, but that's part of his game. And for young quarterbacks, you shouldn't just dismiss that.
And I also think it's worth pointing out, rightfully so, he's got this very gutsy, borderline reckless play style. And the narrative with, the concussion that he had against the Bears and how many times he's been checked, I mean, that's going to follow him until he gets better at protecting himself, whether it's fair or not. But his turnover-worthy play rate is right in line with guys who have played a hell of a lot more football than he has. Like, it's not like he's overly reckless with the football, which is impressive because if you watch one game of him, you're just like, this guy's a madman. But I don't think it's as pronounced as you might guess.
The last point I want to make about this, I'll take it a mea culpa about my previous statements about how the Saints have handled their quarterback situation. Like giving Shough the shot when they did to at least get an idea by the end of the season about what you have with him. And even the idea of like kind of rolling the dice on a guy in the second round, like it's often worth it to make those picks. it's often worth it when you don't have a quarterback to take a shot to find a quarterback. And so I feel like right now, the Tyler Shough thing has worked out about as well as the Saints could have by the time when they decided that he was going to be the starter and not Spencer Rattler.
I said this on the recap show, and I'll absolutely own it, because before the season, I said, you're going to spend a top 40 pick on a quarterback. He's not going to win the starting job, which means he's not going to be in place for at least a chunk of the season. Then he's going to get the job and prove to you that he's worth an extended look in that amount of time. Yeah,
that happened.
That's what he did.
That's what happened.
That's what he did. And I'm not ready to say Tyler Shough is going to be the Saints franchise quarterback for the foreseeable future, but their best path forward right now is probably to take a shot with him as their starter for 2026, not draft a quarterback, at least not one with like a premium pick, and see what this guy's got. And I will readily admit I didn't think he'd be able to pull that off, and he has made me eat my words for sure.
Sticking on Sicko Street here, we don't have to spend a ton of time on this. Falcons-Cardinals is like the saddest pointing Spider-Man meme game of the season. Like both of these teams, like, I mean, obviously the coaching staff's only in year 2 in Atlanta, but the front office is not. And so this was supposed to be the season in both of these places where the birds were supposed to put it together, and neither of them have. Like we're in a spot right now where both Raheem Morris and Jonathan Gannon are sitting up there answering questions about their job security. I mean, these are teams that were supposed to be fighting to be playoff teams this year. They're both slated to pick, they both would pick in the top 10 if they had
that
their
was
seasons.
tough.
That's mean.
And so that's just, for neither of these teams was this the place you wanted to be as we crept toward Christmas. But that's where they both are right now. And it's a pretty sad state of affairs in both of those places.
This is fresh on my mind because we just watched their game for the Texans breakdown. But I just want to say, if you're looking for a bright spot, if you're a Cardinals fan, Walter Nolan kicks ass. Walter Nolan, whoa, that dude's cool. And I know the Texans' offensive line is not great, as we already established, but he was throwing those guys around the other day, man. He's fun.
Derrik and I have talked about this. Like, I do think this is a team specifically that if they found like the right coach and the right quarterback quickly, and I know that's not easy to do, but we just said it, the Cardinals have like a top 6 pick as it currently stands. Like if somehow things fall into place where they stumble into, I know he was picked way later in the first round. If we think that like Fernando Mendoza is going to go number 1, do you think there's a quarterback worth taking at 6 in this class?
If I would say like the 1, maybe 2 you'd be talking about are Dante Moore at Oregon and Ty Simpson at Alabama. I think, yeah, I thought like Dante Moore would be worth taking at 6 if he comes out. We don't know the answer to that yet.
Let's go past that. Let's just say that the new front office, if it is a new front office in Arizona, they pull a Jaxon Dart with Ty Simpson at the end of the first round, and that Ty Simpson can be as good as Jaxon Dart is right now for the Giants. I do feel that there's enough talent elsewhere on this roster where I actually kind of am interested in like a quick turnaround for the Cardinals.
You're talking to the wrong guy, because I'm a Ty Simpson believer. He hasn't played well over the last month of the season, but I'm a fan of what he's done for most of this year. We're getting away from the topic here, but I'm hoping he can put on a show in the playoffs and make me feel right.
I'll be watching.
This is also getting away from the topic, but don't you think Cardinals fans would lose their mind if they took another short quarterback?
How short is Ty Simpson?
Ty Simpson, like he's not Kyler short.
Yeah, but he's not. He's shorter than Baker, probably.
I love the fact that Derrik is like, at least Nate's 6'5" to be a sizist. Derrik is my height, and he's just like, these 6-foot quarterbacks, f*** them.
Because I'm like, if I'm thinking about like, man, you're built like me and you're going to try to play quarterback in the NFL, what are we doing?
Ty Simpson's listed at 6'2", which, yeah, means he's probably Baker size. But yeah, like,
okay.
It's not the same thing as like Kyler Murray. That's all I'm saying.
Derrik is like, if he's not 6'2", he deserves to die.
You better be
Look, the 6'5", 230 guys go in the top 10, Derrik. There's nothing we can do about it.
Listen, if me and a starting quarterback walk off the plane together, it better be very clear which one of us is playing in the NFL.
All right, let's talk about what we want to know at the end of Week 16. Dave, kick us off here, buddy. What do you want to know heading out of Week 16?
I didn't mean to make this my personality. I really didn't. But
just wait till mine. Just wait till mine. So don't worry about it.
I'm fat. I love records. I love NFL history. And Myles Garrett is, I think, going to set NFL history at some point in the final 3 weeks of the season. He's sitting on 21.5 sacks. He needs 1 to tie the NFL record and 1.5 to just own it. And like, what would be more metal than doing it this weekend when the Browns play the Bills? Like, sure, he could do it the way that Michael Strahan did it, and like maybe Aaron Rodgers would fall down for him, or maybe Joe Burrow sits in week 18 and he gets it against like Jake Browning or whatever.
That'd be so sad.
Exactly. That would be so sad. And so what better way to make NFL history than sacking the reigning MVP, the transformer of a quarterback that is Josh Allen? That is the way that NFL history should be set. And it's doable. Josh Allen, he's been sacked 33 times this year, which is 6th highest in the league. He's been sacked in 12 of his 14 games, and he's been sacked multiple times in 9 of his 14 games. So it's doable, Myles. Just go do it. Just go sack Josh Allen twice and get this record in the most metal way imaginable. That's what I want to know if we're going to have a new sack record holder by Monday.
It would be fun if like 2 of the aliens that have ever played in the NFL at their respective positions were to have that moment for all of history.
I don't want to see Aaron Rodgers' first read be like not there, and so he just sort of hesitates and falls down and Myles Garrett taps him for the record-setting sack. I want Josh Allen straining with all of his might, and he's like doubling back and looking downfield and patting the ball, and Garrett's closing in. Like, that's what I want. I want it to happen in a cool way, not like a, oh, okay way.
Mine for week 16. Can Phillip Rivers do this again?
Oh my God. Do what again?
You're right. That is your personality.
Here's what I'll say about this. We talked about the Colts-Seahawks game in the back half of the show during a What the F*** segment that was more tilted toward the Seahawks struggling to beat that Colts team. I've been kind of sitting with this over the last week. We have not properly acknowledged how insane it is that a 44-year-old man who did not play football in 5 years walked off his couch into an NFL game against the best defense in the NFL and actually could play the position. Not only could play the position, he's at the line of scrimmage checking protections, like just the ability, how crazy it is that this man did not play football for 5 years and then at full speed could have enough of an understanding and control and authority within the offense to be doing all of that and going to the right place with the ball almost every single time he was dropping back to pass is insane. Like, it is truly crazy that that just happened. And I know that we talked about it a lot leading up to the game. I don't think I have talked about it or thought about it in the proper tone since we actually watched it happen.
I think it's kind of amazing he didn't turn the ball over until obviously the last play of the game where he just has to chuck up an interception. But like, you just think about like, he can't throw it very far. He can't throw it very hard. He can't move. The fact that he didn't turn the ball over against like arguably the best defenses in the league is crazy. And so we're going to get another week where his deepest pass is like 14 yards. But against the Niners, I don't know if Tyler Warren makes 2 plays, like that might do something.
I don't know, man.
If that's what he looked like against Seattle, I mean, like this Niners defense just isn't very equipped. I'm not saying he's going to light them up.
Yeah,
but
I don't think he has the physical capacity to light anybody up. But the idea that he's just like, again, he had like 4 days and he's checking like the plays and the protections like he was playing the league last week.
You know damn good and well that he's been doing that shit in his office at his high school for the last 4 years.
Yes.
He does that for fun.
He gets it's a little bit different
office
when you're at Lumen Field with Leo Williams, like Leonard Williams on the other side of the ball. Like it is crazy that just happened. And so the idea that maybe we just get to watch him do this for like 3 more weeks. Again, there's a joke in Oh Hello, the John Mulaney, Nick Kroll thing that I won't repeat, but the punchline is, we at Oh Hello do not think this has been talked about enough. And that is how I feel about the Phillip Rivers thing. Like, we at the Athletic Football Show do not think we have approached this with the correct tone and how insane it is. Derrik, what do you want to know coming out of week 16?
Mine is like on the opposite end. It's a little bit sadder. Obviously, the Chiefs season is over. They've got to go play the Tennessee Titans, which like... I almost think there is something about, like, if your season just ended, you lose Patrick Mahomes, I would almost want to play more of, like, a mediocre team. Like, I would kind of want to play the Panthers because you at least kind of have to get up for that game. How easy would it be to look at the Titans after your season just ended and be like, I don't know if I even care to do this. And so I'm curious, like, can the Titans actually kind of pull off a decent game here? And there's more to it than just that. I think, like, we've seen Cam Ward have cool moments. I actually think that Tennessee's front with where Kansas City's offensive line is banged up a little bit could cause Gardner Minshew some issues. So I am morbidly curious about this game is all.
If that's not the greatest encapsulation of like the NFL, and like the NFL does not give a shit about you, like this incredibly historic Chiefs run, at least mathematically, comes to an end, and you don't have your leader and your best player, and I'm sure everybody on the Chiefs needs a moment to like lick their wounds, and then there are the Titans, like, we don't give a shit. We're trying to win a game. We got a young quarterback who needs the experience. Lace him up. Let's go. I just imagine Travis Kelce like, come on, guys. Like, are we doing this today? And the Titans are like, hell yeah, we are. Let's go.
All right. That is all we've got for week 16. Obviously, you guys are listening to this on Friday, but a massive Thursday night football game is happening about 3 hours from now after we're done recording this. Encourage you guys to go check out the Thursday night football recap that is sitting in the Athletic Football Show YouTube channel. Really excited about that one. Hopefully it lives up to the hype. We will be back here on Sunday. We're not going to be recapping the Saturday games live. We'll be doing plenty of that in the playoffs, but I'm sure we will hit Bears-Packers on the Sunday recap, so please be on the lookout for that. For now, that's all we got. Appreciate you guys listening. We'll talk to you very soon. Thanks for watching. Follow the Athletic Football Show wherever you get your podcasts, and don't forget to subscribe on YouTube.